Hello and welcome to Odds Bundesliga. One season more. We are back to analyze the German league with our expert Ronan Murphy. It looks like a really one-sided Bundesliga after 2 years ago Leverkusen winning the title, and last year we had a title fight. This one, look at the odds, it's only 1.3 for Bayern to win the title.
Yeah, it looks like one of those seasons where Bayern Munich are going to win the title. So I think we'll have to look for value everywhere else in all other markets, apart from who's going to win the Bundesliga title. Because even if you look at the amount of money Bayern Munich spent and the amount of money everyone else spent, or the players they brought in, and even though Harry Kane is complaining that Bayern Munich have the smallest squad ever, they still have the best squad in the Bundesliga. So it's going to be one of those seasons where Bayern Munich win the Bundesliga. We saw a bit of it last week against Stuttgart. Bayern were too good for Stuttgart, so Bayern are just going to be too good. So yeah, we'll have to look at every other market and every other position in the table to find entertainment and find value. But sometimes there is value to be found in Bayern Munich, even winning games.
Well, actually, for instance, if you are looking for long bets, the fight for the fourth spot is going to be really interesting, the fight for the Champions League. So, guys, stay tuned. Let me know in the comments what do you think about the Bundesliga, about the market. And don't forget, of course, press the like, subscribe, and now let's go on with the show. Well, and actually, Ronan, the Bundesliga starts on Friday with one of the best games we can see in the tournament, in the league. I'm talking about Bayern Munich. RB Leipzig is going to be the second official game of Bayern Munich since they won the Super Cup last weekend. And we saw already in the score sheet, Luis Diaz and Harry Kane. What can they do this season? Probably they are going to score many, many goals in this Bundesliga with the Colombian signed from Liverpool. They spent a good amount of money. Bayern Munich, not only to fight for the Bundesliga, but of course the aim is to fight also for the Champions League. They also got 𝗀 in the transfer window, but Coman, Sané, Dyer or Müller, of course, are out of the team, and also Musiala, as we know, long-term injury. But much more questions we can pose to Leipzig. Last season was awful, and I have some doubts also about the summer transfer window with 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐻 being sold. We expected this, but also with a new or a very young manager, Ronan, Ole Werner, only 37 years old. I'm even older, I must say.
Yes, yeah. You wouldn't know by looking at us, but we're both older than 37 years. But yeah, Ole Werner, he's obviously he brings experience from his time at Kiel and his time at Bremen. And the one thing that RB Leipzig, we said from week to week last season, is they weren't scoring enough goals. And that's surprising considering they just sold one of their strikers to Manchester United for 75 million. But yeah, they weren't scoring enough goals last season. They weren't converting enough chances. And hopefully Ole Werner can be the man to do that. And his Bremen team in the matches where he was in charge, they scored 1.654 goals a game themselves, but they had total match goals of 3.24 throughout his career at Bremen. So hopefully we'll get some of that Leipzig that we used to know and love back, the Leipzig that were entertaining, the Leipzig that scored a lot of goals. And yeah, hopefully that's what we'll see. And we saw a glimpse of that last week in the German Cup, the DFB Pokal. The first round was on at the weekend, and if you were paying attention to it, you would have seen lots of goals and lots of games. And as always, the seeded team, the higher ranked team, is always the away match. So Leipzig travelled to Sandhausen, where they scored 4 times. They conceded 2 more goals. It was one of those really entertaining matches. So hopefully more of that to come from Leipzig this season. Like I said, Bayern Munich, they brought in Luis Diaz, 𝗀𝗀, but they lost a lot of players. As I said in the introduction, Harry Kane has been complaining about that it's the smallest squad he's ever played for. You've seen Manuel Neuer try to put pressure on the board to sign more players in the past week or so. So we've seen in the past that this doesn't usually go down well with the higher ups at Bayern. Philipp Lahm was fined before €50,000 for complaining that he wanted more signings. So I don't think Harry Kane and Philipp Lahm or Harry Kane and Manuel Neuer are going to be fined the way Lahm was, but Bayern Munich need to do a bit more business before the end of the transfer window to win or compete for the Champions League. Like I said, it's their main aim this season. So far, they've done pretty well, but we'll see once they start to play 2 matches a week how that squad will work out. But I think they're hoping for some of the young players like Leonard Carl to step up, Wisdom Mike maybe to step up as well. Paul Bonner is being linked with PSV, with Bayern Dortmund to sell him. So they are looking to that the younger players who come through the academy maybe might feature a bit more this season. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks before the window closes to see what Bayern do and can then bring in other big names, because 𝐿𝐿 is a player that's been linked with. He obviously used to play for Leipzig, so there's plenty of narrative there. This we're hoping for a great match to kick off the Bundesliga. I am hoping for it as well, because both games last season were both teams to score yes. Both games between the sides the season before were both teams to score yes. Last season, if you remember, Bayern won 5-1 at home against Leipzig. It was a 3-3 draw in the second match. So go for both teams to score yes at 170 as the main tip for this one. But I also like the look of total goals over 3.5. That's 180. It's a bit higher. But yeah, both teams to score yes is probably a safer option in this one.
Do you think the transfer has been good for Bayern Munich? They've made enough to fight for the Champions League this season, or at least to qualify for the semi-finals and the final, which is the goal?
I don't think so. I think they are still lacking up front because, like you said, Musiala is injured, but that should be kind of resolved by November. But they brought in Diaz, but they've lost 2. They've brought in 1 winger and they've lost 2 wingers. So their attack line is weaker than it was last season on paper. And I know Coman wasn't the most consistent player. Sané wasn't the most consistent player, but they were players, if you were looking to the bench, that you could turn to, and maybe this guy can inject some sort of sparkle in the game that they're drawing and they need to win. And they don't have those players anymore on the bench. And even Thomas Muller, he was a player that they could rely on in big moments, or you would send him on with 5 minutes to go, and maybe he would score. Maybe he would get an assist. And I think we had a anytime goal scorer or something that came in well in the last couple of weeks when we thought that his time would be up. So I think Bayern need a stronger squad in attack if they are to compete for the Champions League. They should comfortably win the Bundesliga. Put down your bet now and get 130 odds, and yeah, if you want to mortgage your house and get the money back next May, then that could be the way to go. But yeah, the Champions League at the moment, it looks too difficult for Bayern with the signings they've made.
Okay, we don't advise you guys, of course, to put in a mortgage with your house, just in case.
That's
we saw Thomas Muller scoring, by the way, in the first minutes on the pitch in the US, although the goal was disallowed, but still, he, of course, has a lot of goals on him. Well, a great game, this one, to start the season. Bayern Munich, RB Leipzig. Let me know, guys, what do you think about company's team, about the market? In the comment section, if you place Bayern Munich as one of the favorites to win the Champions League. We know, of course, that they are favorites to win the Bundesliga. And the other candidate, if there is another candidate, I don't think so, is Leverkusen. Next game is Leverkusen Hoffenheim. A lot of changes, a big question mark about this Leverkusen. No Xabi Alonso, as we all know. Erik ten Hag is the new manager after a lot of criticism around him when he was at Manchester United. Now he's back with another project. Perhaps he can do as well as he did in the Eredivisie. Also another project because many important players are out. We know Florian Wirtz sold to Liverpool for a lot of money. Also Frimpong, also out Xhaka, So many players out. This is a completely new project. Ronan, we have some signings, Tillman, Kwanzaa, for instance, big arrivals. And, well, we have Hoffenheim. Last year was a disaster for them. They even risked to get relegated. They finished 4th from bottom. So we expect them to be better, at least this season.
Yeah, you'd hope to be a bit better, and I think this Bayer Leverkusen side maybe is a good side to test themselves out in the first week of the Bundesliga, because this Bayer Leverkusen team, like you said, are in transition. They have new players kind of everywhere, a new man in the dugout. They're still getting used to that. And Xabi Alonso, a few managers in the world that can compete with the way he's performed over the last couple of seasons at Leverkusen. So Erik ten Hag does have a big job on his hands. The only thing is it's less pressure, less attention than Manchester United. So maybe he will be a success there. I'm hoping he will be a success there because we have seen him in the past be a success at Ajax. The new signings they've made, it will be hard to replace the guys that have gone out. Quansah, I think, is a good signing. He's their joint record signing with Malik Tillman, like you mentioned. And Tillman, unfortunately, hasn't even played in pre-season for Bayer Leverkusen. They're hoping to have him back for this match on Saturday. He got injured in the Gold Cup final against Mexico while playing for the USA. It cost 35 million. He's come in with big potential. He's been given Florian Wirtz's number 10 jersey, so they're expecting a lot from him at Leverkusen, but you kind of wonder, will he be fit enough to make an impact this weekend? Bayer Leverkusen obviously have a lot of other players who can. We saw them in the Cup. They had 4 different players were on the score sheet for them. 𝐷𝗵𝐺 scored from the penalty spot, so that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Will he be their penalty taker this season going forward? Because the odds on him scoring as an anytime goal scorer in matches could be high because he's obviously not forward. So that'll be an interesting one to see when the strikers are on the pitch. Will he be the man taking the penalties? Because that could be an interesting one because he's also capable of scoring free kicks. He scored 10 goals 2 seasons ago for Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. So, yeah, I'll keep an eye on him. A player on Hoffenheim to keep an eye on is Max Morstedt, who scored in their 4-0 win over Hansa Rostock in the Cup. He scored a hat-trick against Spain in the Euro Under-19s. You might remember that one. Spain won 6-5 after extra time in the semi-final of the Under-19 Euros this summer. But Morstedt scored a hat-trick in that, so he is massively regarded at Hoffenheim. So a lot of the times we were saying where their goals were coming from last season, Kramaric was underperforming. They weren't getting goals from their other forwards. Kramaric was even being criticised by the coach and criticising himself at stages last season. So maybe he could be the man to get them goals this season. They have won every game in pre-season. They won their cup game. So they'd want the season to be over now because everything's gone perfect for them so far. But Leverkusen do have a fantastic record against Hoffenheim. They've won the last 5 meetings between the two sides, but Hoffenheim have scored in all of those defeats. It was 4-1 and 3-1 to Leverkusen last season. So hopefully more of the same this season. The most common result in this one is 2-1. The most common result in Leverkusen is 2-1. Going for a correct score of 2-1 if you want to go for that. I always like giving a correct score. A lot of the time they don't come in, so don't bet a lot of money. Don't bet your mortgage on anything, like Edu said earlier. But yeah, correct score 2-1 is 850 in this one. Both teams to score, yes, it's obviously a safer one than that, 161. But to tie in with correct score 2-1, total goals over 3 is 172. And make sure that if it is exactly 3, that you are getting your money back from whatever bookmaker. Check the terms and conditions beforehand.
Well, the Bundesliga is a great league to bet on goals, on both teams to score. Even in Matchday 1, we saw not many goals, actually. In the French league, Matchday 1, 7 games out of 9 were 1-0. In the Premier League also, not many goals. In La Liga, so, but the Bundesliga is a different thing, as we all know. 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐿 is telling us Leverkusen Asian handicap -1. So at least to win by 2 goals margin. And another team playing in the Champions League, another candidate at least to be runners-up behind Bayern Munich is Eintracht Frankfurt. A lot of question marks also about their market because we know that it was a big loss, Marmoush, last December, but at the end they qualified for the Champions League also because the replacement 𝐻𝐞𝐿 was great, but now also 𝐻𝐞𝐿 is doing great for Liverpool in his start at the Premier League. So let's see how is the recruitment of Eintracht Frankfurt, some investment done with the money received from the Premier League recently, Doan Bukar, Rasmus Christensen, but they are playing Champions League this season. We know that usually this pay a toll in the teams, and they start the season at home where usually they are strong against a team that was very close to the European spots at the end, Ronan, like Werder Bremen.
Yeah, Bremen, obviously, we mentioned 𝐬𝐵 leaving for RB Leipzig, but they came in 8th last season, so that was a kind of an incredible performance for them. He kind of went from one team that barely missed out on Europe to another team that barely missed out on Europe. But it will be interesting to see how Frankfurt perform with the Champions League. They're back in the Champions League. They are one of these kind of traditional German clubs with a big history. They've had some fantastic players in the past, but they're also fantastic at selling strikers, and that's what they've done again this summer. So maybe Jan Burkhardt can be the next striker they develop into a 90 million or 80 million striker that they can sell in a year or two. But there's big hopes for 𝗏𝗏𝗏 that he can be a regular goal scorer at Frankfurt after being a regular goal scorer before, because Germany are always on the lookout for a new number 9. So maybe that he might be the next man. The good promising signings from 𝗏𝗏𝗏, and one of the other new signings that you mentioned, there was a promising signs from him that he scored twice in the cup game against Angers. I know they're a much lower division team, but yeah, there was another, maybe an interesting one, was 𝗏𝗏𝗏, the January player they brought in for Marmoush. He finally scored for Frankfurt. He played 12 games, I think it was, last season. Did not score at all after the signing. So he scored in the cup. So maybe he's found his level. But yeah, they're hoping that 𝗏𝗏𝗏 can be the player to score goals for them this season, because yeah, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 wasn't really doing. 𝗔𝗏𝗏𝗏 came off the bench in that cup match. I saw that the officials board go up. I was like, is that 𝗏𝗏𝗏 coming back on? Yeah, he's still there for another season. So let's see how that goes. And Bremen have a new manager themselves. Horst Steffen is the man in the dugout. He spent the last 7 years at Elversberg. If anyone follows Oddspedia closely, you know that we had a documentary on Elversberg there a season or two ago about them trying to get up from the third division into the second division, which spoilers, they achieved, because that's why Horst Steffen is the man that is the new Bremen manager. But he was the man who masterminded that. He even got them into the promotion playoff in the Zweite Liga, the second Bundesliga last season. Barely missed out. They conceded kind of at the end of 180 minutes, the 95th minute of the second leg. They lost to miss out on going up to the Bundesliga. It would have been an incredible kind of fairy tale story that we don't see too often. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he does at Bremen. But at Bremen, things don't look too rosy after the weekend they've had already, because they've knocked out of the cup by Arminia Bielefeld, a team from a lower division. Their captain Marco Friedl come out and he kind of criticised the board in his post-match interview with the media, but then he cut himself short because he realised that he was going to get himself into trouble. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. That should play into Frankfurt's hands. 4 of Bremen's first 5 fixtures are against teams who are playing in Europe next season. They've only made one big signing. That's Bandula from Juventus. 10 million they're after spending on him. He's a winger, a young winger. He's not really proven yet. So things aren't looking great for Bremen yet. So it could be a long few weeks for their new manager. Frankfurt is a difficult place to travel in the first game of the season. Both games at home last season were wins to 0. Frankfurt to win to 0 could be an option here at 360. Frankfurt, the one thing I'm kind of keeping an eye on is what kind of formation they'll play, because they played 4 at the back last week, but maybe that's because Arthur Theata was suspended. So I'm interested to see whether they play 3 at the back like they did last season, the 3-4-2-1 and 3-4-1-2 that worked so well to provide 𝐿𝐿 Marmoush with goals. Will they keep with that to provide 𝗏𝗏𝗏 with goals this season? But I think Frankfurt should have enough about them to win this match. So Frankfurt win 183. I'm not going for too many wins because it's this week, because it's usually hard to predict who's going to win because we haven't seen too much of these teams in competitive matches yet. But yeah, this is a week for going for goals, but maybe not for going for goals for Bremen.
Well, actually, 𝐋𝐿 is going for under 2.5 goals in this game. Indeed, we usually see many surprises in the opening match days in the leagues. Thank you, 𝗵𝗏𝗏. Thank you, 𝐿𝐿, for your messages. We are also happy to be back one season more. And another team that did great last season, Freiburg, playing at home against Augsburg. And luckily for them, they were unable to keep the Champions League spot, so they are going to play UEFA Europa League this season. They swapped Japanese players, Doan for Suzuki, and they are playing against Augsburg, a team that we are used to see in the middle of the table, not suffering, not challenging for Europe. I was checking the stats. Last season, 5 wins away from home, which is pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, I had a look at when I was looking at the tips for this one. I was seeing Augsburg were 460. They're now 470 to win. I thought that was very high for Augsburg. I'm not going to say they're definitely going to win, but I think they have a very good chance against Freiburg. Freiburg are a team that are known for not winning matches by big margins. They're a team that are known for kind of keeping close, tight matches. I know they don't have Christian Streich as their head coach anymore, but his replacement is kind of a similar mindset, similar sort of a manager to him. Augsburg have been good on the road, like you said. They won in the cup away last weekend against 𝐿𝐵𝐿, or Alisher FC as they're known now, obviously. Since the Berlin Wall came down, they're known as that. Yeah, and Steve Mooney actually scored in that match, and yeah, he has as many goals this season as last season. One. So yeah, Huddersfield legend. He didn't really do a lot last season, but hopefully he can do something a bit more interesting under the new manager Sandro Wagner. If you remember Sandro Wagner, he has a lovely beard. If you want to have a look at him, he's the former Germany international, former Bayern Munich striker Hoffenheim, former Germany assistant manager. He's the new manager of Augsburg. It's a bit like Keith Andrews going to Brentford with as a former international assistant and then getting a managing job in the top tier. But Wagner has a bit more experience than Andrews, because he won the Regionalliga Bayern with Unterhaching back in the day. So he was, and then he stepped down once he had won that because he wanted to do bigger and better things. But Germany came calling, so he got some experience there. So I'm intrigued to see how he performs as a manager in the top flight. He obviously is a huge character off the field, so he could make for some lively and interesting press conferences and quotes and stuff. So we might be bringing them into the shows as the season goes on, especially if things are going really well or really badly for them. But I think it'll be a good season for Augsburg. They don't play in Europe, like I said, but they are very much the definition of a mid-table team. Freiburg have Europe this season, so they will have to juggle that. Freiburg won 3-1 at home last season, but they drew 0-0 away. Augsburg have played 9 games in pre-season. They've won 5 of those, including one that they beat Crystal Palace. They played a doubleheader against Crystal Palace and were able to beat Crystal Palace. So yeah, the Augsburg odds of winning, I'm not going to go fully and say 470. I'm going to take that, but I do like an Augsburg double chance at 205. I think that's pretty good. But I also think that this could be a match that's only separated by 1 goal. Maybe that goal will be in the second half. So Augsburg first half draw no bet. A very specific one I'm going for here. 280.
Okay, we have 𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐻 going for both teams to score an over 2.5 goals. Also, Cash Out King thinks we are going to see goals in this case from Freiburg. Next one is Heidenheim Wolfsburg. Heidenheim got safe last season in the play-out against Elversberg. They drew in the first leg and they won away. So after playing the conference last season, they struggled, and now they can fully focus on staying in the Bundesliga this season. For Wolfsburg, last season was very poor. They finished 11th. So I hope they think they can do better this season for Wolfsburg.
Yeah, so far so good for them. They played Hemmelingen in the cup and they won 9-0 at the weekend. So yeah, so far so good for them. And Hemmelingen, if you are trying to find out any information on them on Wikipedia, they're one of 2 teams in the first round of the cup this season that don't have a Wikipedia page in England. So that kind of tells you the level of team that Wolfsburg are playing. But you can only beat what's in front of you. And a couple of Bundesliga teams kind of struggled in the first round of the cup against lower ranked teams. Not that low as we're seeing. But they play in the Bremen Liga, which is in the 5th tier. And they won 6-0 last week. They lost 9-0 this week. So if you're looking for outlandish bets, Hemmelingen having lots of goals in a match, but also keeping a clean sheet, or both teams score no, could be an interesting one. The big talking point from that Wolfsburg win was 𝐻𝐿𝐴 scoring a hat-trick. We
don't have a match for them.
No, there. See, exactly. This is a team that they don't do too much. But yeah, the big talking point for Wolfsburg is 𝐻𝐿𝐴. He is being compared to 𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐬𝐿 at Wolfsburg because he has a very similar first name to 𝐻𝐿𝐴's surname, 𝐶EZNAN. So that's why he's been called. And he also has Bosnian heritage. So yeah, he's been compared to him. He says he modeled himself a bit on Harry Kane. So there is high hopes for him. He scored a hat-trick in that match. He's still only a teenager, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on. The Wolfsburg have a new coach, Paul Simonis, who came from Go Ahead Eagles after winning the Dutch Cup. So he's young, but he comes with a decent recent track record. We'll see how he gets on. For them, Heidenheim, they won as well in the cup. Cienza scored twice in their 5-0 win over Ballinger SC, but he might actually leave before the transfer window closes. But I like some of the signings Heidenheim have made. 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏, not that 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏, a different one, has come in on loan from Bayern Munich. Arjan 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏, he's an attacking player, so you'll see how he gets on. And they've also brought in 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗏, the Borussia Dortmund goalkeeper, and he saved the penalty in their cup game, so he has high hopes of being the next permanent Borussia Dortmund goalkeeper, so wants to impress this season on loan at Heidenheim. So I think this is a match that we could see kind of both teams test each other out. Match day 1 last season had 5 of 9 games with 3+ goals. Like I've been saying, match day 1 is a good week for not predicting who's going to win, but predicting goals in Bundesliga matches, unlike League On, as you said, and the Premier League, which some of those matches I saw at the weekend were diabolical. So hopefully we're not going to get that in the Bundesliga. Match day 1 in 2023 had 6 games with 3 or more goals, and in 2022 there was 7 of 9 games in the Bundesliga with 3 or more goals. So we're hoping for more of that. This match last season was a 3-1 win for Wolfsburg. Both teams to score yes. Looks good here again at 161, and total goals over 2.5 is 174.
I chose to watch Chelsea Crystal Palace, so it was a really bad idea, actually. Well, cash out also going for goals, over 2.5 goals. I like Wolfsburg double chance for George Armando, and also 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻𝐿 going for goals, in this case for Heidenheim. Next game is Union Berlin Stuttgart. Stuttgart last season was a success for them, winning the Pokal. They are going to play, and they played the Champions League last season. This season they started losing the Super Cup, and last season they finished 9th because they were playing in so many fronts. Perhaps this season they can do better in the Bundesliga if they are only focused in the local competition, but of course they also have Europa League. And Union Berlin was kind of a quiet one last season after struggling 2 seasons ago to stay in the Bundesliga and playing the Champions League. Usually they are strong when they are playing at home, Union Berlin, although the bookies place them really as the underdog for this game.
Yeah, I think they are usually strong to kind of make their stadium a fortress, and if anyone's been there, you'll realize why. You have to walk through kind of a wooded forest to get there. It's the stadium of the old forester's house. It translates to us in English. So yeah, it's kind of one of these imposing old school grounds. It is the only one that existed when East Germany existed that's in the top level in the Bundesliga, because RB Leipzig, modern, state-of-the-art Red Bull Arena, was the Central Stadion in Leipzig, but was totally different than what it is now. But Union's at least kind of gets some of the atmosphere of an old school Eastern European ground that maybe you don't see too often elsewhere. You definitely don't see in any of the top flight leagues in the Big Five, obviously. But yeah, Stuttgart won 3-2 at home in this one last season. It was a 4-4 match in Berlin last season, believe it or not. We don't really see too many of them with Union Berlin being involved. So yeah, this one is the one I'm hoping for more goals, for a surprise for Union Berlin. It was interesting to see at the weekend in the Cup, they scored 5, but again, they're playing a lower league team. But Andrej Ilić scored, he picking up where he left off last season. He scored 5 goals in the last 12 games of last season. He's already scored 1 in 1 this season. He could be an interesting bet as an anytime goal scorer, because he is not one of the players that the bookies are thinking is going to be a definite scorer. 4-10 for him is if you want to take a small little chance on him to go on. Stuttgart, like you said, they played against Bayern in the Super Cup. They were probably always going to lose that, but Jamie Leveling scored in stoppage time. If he stays around and is not signed by a team in England this summer, he could be an interesting one for the rest of the season, because he's a very exciting attacker and they have high hopes for him at the club. Both teams to score yes is a good option again here. 168 or 161 for that one. Total goals over 2.5 is the 168 I mentioned. But I think this is a match where Stuttgart can score a couple of goals. So if you believe in them, Stuttgart over 1.5 goals is 193.
Okay, this one looks like an under for Cletus. Cletus was a character, no, in The Simpsons as well.
Yeah. That's
countryside guy. The countryside guy.
The yokel, as they call it in America. Yeah.
Next game, Pauli, Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund had a great second part of the season under 𝐿𝐿𝐴, qualified for the Champions League. Good news for them. Good stream of income this season, and I would say they were okay in the club FIFA Champions or World Cup or whatever it was called, out against Real Madrid, but was okay. Their run, we know that they got the other Bellingham, they got 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵, they lost Gittens, going to Chelsea, so perhaps they could do better this season in the Bundesliga and stay in the top 4. Throughout the season, Pauli finished 3 points above the bottom 3, which was a success since they got back to the Bundesliga last season. But usually their success was thanks of their away games, because at home they only won 3 games last season. And also, remember the problems that Borussia Dortmund had at the beginning of the season, especially, but during the season playing away from home.
Yeah, this Pauli side was abysmal at home last season. 3 games, like you said. It was lucky to be at one of them. So yeah, it was it was an interesting night there in Hamburg when they beat Kiel last season. But yeah, they mightn't have things as easy. Not that it was easy last season, but I think things could be more difficult for them this season. They only scored 28 goals last season. That's 5 fewer than Bochum, who came last and were relegated, and they couldn't in the cup this weekend. Pauli couldn't score in 90 minutes. They couldn't score in the extra 30 minutes in the cup against a 4-team side who are actually in the Regionalliga Nord with St. Pauli's reserve team. They play in the team that plays against the reserves twice a season. St. Pauli couldn't even beat in 120 minutes. So it could be a long season for them. Borussia Dortmund, like you said, 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵 has been sensational since he took over. His form is fantastic. 25 games, 15 wins, 4 draws, 53 goals scored. So yeah, Dortmund, they won 1-0. They kind of struggled in the cup on Monday night, but they won, and that's the main thing. They got their season off with a win. I think they'll feel maybe a little stronger 11 at the weekend. We might see Bellingham start if he had some sort of he was after having some sort of mouth operation, an oral operation, they were saying. So yeah, maybe something with his teeth perhaps it had happened, so he didn't start. So maybe we'll see Jude Bellingham start in the Bundesliga for the first time. He should add a lot to their midfield, a bit of dynamism in there. Borussia Dortmund over 1.5 goals. I think they will score goals in this one. That's 177. Dortmund to win is 178. So they're kind of essentially the same bet for me. And the player who scored in the cup is the player that I'm banking on again this season, 𝐸𝐴𝐵. He scored 30 goals in 30 games in 23-24. He scored 38 goals in 50 games last season for Borussia Dortmund. He scored 1 goal in 1 game so far this season. So let's make it 2 goals in 2 games. 𝐸𝐴𝐵, anytime goal scorer, and you'll double your money.
Well, not many people trust Borussia Dortmund. First rule of the season, never trust Borussia Dortmund. Cletus is telling us also cash out kings like Chelsea or like Atlético de Madrid. He thinks it's going to be a disappointment, this game, for Borussia Dortmund. And indeed, George, also, Dortmund burned so many tickets last year. It's really hard to trust them. Well, I remember losing to Kiel, for instance. I think it was like January, February, with a foggy atmosphere, but indeed it was difficult to trust this team. But with the new manager, with 𝐋𝐞𝐭'𝐬, things changed last season and they improved until the point of qualifying for the Champions League. Next game is Mainz Cologne. We have the 2 teams promoted to the Bundesliga to analyze for the last games. Cologne back to the Bundesliga after only 1 year away. Mainz, on the other hand, they will play Europe this season. They finished 6th. Last season was one of the big surprises. I remember when Cologne actually got relegated, Mainz was fighting against Cologne to avoid relegation a couple of seasons ago. But things have changed. I don't know if Mainz could be one of these teams that playing in Europe could distract them from the Bundesliga and they could struggle this season.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. We saw seen it, like you mentioned, Heidenheim on the show earlier, but we saw it before that with Union Berlin when they were in Europe. They struggled, so I think it could be the same for Mainz this season. It could be a difficult season, especially because Jan Burkhardt, he was kind of their main source of goals. He's gone too. So where are these goals going to come from? I know they were brilliant in preseason. They won 5 games and drew another. But Cologne, they've also been brilliant in preseason. They've won 4 games and drawn their other one. They even beat Atalanta 4-0 in preseason. So maybe this Cologne team can be one of these teams that comes up and then stays up, like we saw from St. Pauli last season. They played Jan Regensburg in the cup. They won 2-1. They'd be happy with that. Jan Regensburg are a team that could cause trouble. They're a more difficult side than some of the other teams that the Bundesliga teams had to face this weekend. Mainz, they were only able to beat Dynamo Dresden 1-0 on Monday night. Nadim Amiri scored. He seems to be around the Bundesliga forever and pops up time to time to get crucial goals like that. The last 3 meetings between these two sides they weren't that long ago because it was only last season that Cologne were missing, like you were saying. Mainz and Cologne drew, so this one looks like it could be a draw. Mainz won 5-0 before that back in 2022-23, but we'll forget about that. That's too long ago. So I think this one could be a draw at 3.8 or 3.80 or 3.95. It's even more now than I had written in my notes. Yeah, 3.95 looks pretty good for a draw. But Cologne double chance could be a good opportunity because, like I said, it's the first week of the season. Anything could happen. So, yeah, Cologne double chance at 2.03. If it's a draw, pretty good. If it's Cologne win, pretty good too.
Okay, we have both teams to score on or over 2.5 goals also. Our audience is going for goals in this game. And the final game is Gladbach Hamburg. Really happy to see Hamburg back in the Bundesliga. What a classic from the German football. And later on in the season, of course, we're going to see Hamburg. St. Pauli, the manager, Merlin Polsin, 34 years old. Ronan, we can also say that he's younger than us. Gladbach last season, they were pretty poor, 10th only. So I guess same as Wolfsburg, no? One of these teams that not a long time ago, we saw them playing Champions League, and now they are so far away from the top 4.
Yeah, this Gladbach team have kind of gone back. They're not the Gladbachs of old, the Gladbachs of the 1970s. We're not that old. We're not that old to actually remember, but I have read about these teams and I've seen highlights on YouTube that Gladbach were European giants once upon a time, but not at the moment. And they had a difficult cup game. They only won 3-2 against Atlas Delmenhorst. They're Atlas Delmenhorst, who are not named after the book that maps are in, but actually a company that makes diggers and loaders and stuff. That's the traditional kind of old school German team where they're a factory team and they get named after, like Bayer Leverkusen, obviously. But yeah, Atlas Delmenhorst, yeah, that's the only time they'll be mentioned on the show this year, so we might as well drink that one in. You were saying you watched Chelsea, was it, at the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched a bit of Pirmasens and Hamburg in the DFB Pokal and on the DFB's live kind of player, and yeah, it was not magic performance for Morland, the coach you mentioned earlier, to win for Hamburg. They only equalised in the 92nd minute against Pirmasens, who were in the 5th year, I'm fairly sure, and then they won an extra time with a goal from 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐴𝐻. So yeah, it was not a vintage performance from Hamburg. It looked like it could be a long season for Hamburg if anything is to go by from the performance that they put in the cup. They were very poor in pre-season in their friendlies before that. They won just one game, that was against Oldenburg. They didn't score against Copenhagen. They didn't score against Lyon. They didn't score against Mallorca. Could be a very difficult season for Hamburg. So both teams to score no could be an option. I haven't said that yet on the show because usually most of the matches on week 1 in the Bundesliga are goal scoring matches. But yeah, this one I'm going to both teams score no at 2.55. And I'm also going to pick a rare win on match day 1 as well for Gladbach to win at 1.95.
We have two huge teams promoted to the Bundesliga, like Hamburg, like Cologne. Last season, Bochum or Kiel were down, smaller teams. Do you think one of these teams can get saved, or even both?
Yeah, I think Cologne are obviously the most likely. They won the second division last season. They look a bit better on paper. Their squad seems a bit deeper. they should be able to manage it, and they have kind of more recent Bundesliga experience than Hamburg do. But I just, it's great to see Hamburg back, because we get the Hamburg derby. St. Pauli against Hamburg should be one of the biggest matches this season, so I'm interested to see that one. But Cologne, yeah, they usually have better young players, better players coming through the academy. They have a better team on paper, I think. So I think they can be the more likely of the teams to stay up. And I think if you were to ask me a follow-up question, who's going to go down, I think it could be a long season for Heidenheim. I think they could be pulled into it again.
We only need Schalke and Hertha, for instance, back in the Bundesliga, or 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐺𝐿, no? If we are talking about classics, but especially Schalke and Hertha should be in the Bundesliga. Well, Gladbach to win and over 1.5 goals. Also, Cletus is going for over 1.5 goals for the home team. Well, Ronan, this is it, guys. Thank you for your comments. Remember that we have tipster competitions going on for you, completely free to participate. You just need to sign up in the Oddspedia website, and you have the chance to win this cash money up to $1,000. There you have monthly, yearly competitions, probably some other competitions going on soon, and also rivals. Here you can create your own tipster competitions or join one that was created by our community. Very easy to use, very fun, and very free, which we all like. Well, Ronan, let's go with your safe bet. And it's not to put pressure on you, but last week our international ACCA was correct. It was 3 selections, since we only had 3 competitions going on. So now we add your Bundesliga tip.
Yeah, I hope Evan Ferguson to score is the safe bet for the Serie A this weekend, but when that returns. But yeah, for now, I'm going for Frankfurt Asian handicap 0 as my safe bet, 135.
Well, having Gasperini as a manager in Roma usually means goals, or at least an attacking mindset for your team. And the Bundesliga ACCA?
Yeah, the ACCA, I'm going for Dortmund over 1.5 goals, Frankfurt Asian handicap 0, and Gladbach Asian handicap 0 for 339.
All right. Well, Ronan, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thanks, everyone, for following our Bundesliga videos. We are going to be back next season, so tell your friends. Stay tuned and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.